Hello, welcome to my presentation of my final project. Today I will be talking about how through cultural exchange, animation as a form of visual storytelling varies in Eastern and Western cultures. Animation was first invented by Charles-Émile Renaud on July 20th, 1987, by painting glass frames and projecting them one after another to create motion. This is seen right here. You see his little setup. He's got the projections coming through and projecting this way with all these little painted tiles of different aspects of the movement. And this projected one after another creates motion visually. It wasn't until 1908 when Émile Coel released his first animated film ever, and the first animated film ever, Phantasmarie, where we follow a stick man through encountering all sorts of morphing objects, such as a wine bottle that transforms into a flower, which transforms into an elephant, which we see the elephant here. There are also sections of live action where the animator's hand enters the scene. The main character is actually drawn by the artist's hand on camera. The main characters being this clown, doesn't really look like a clown, but he's a clown, and the gentleman here with a sword. It, however, wasn't until 1908 when the film Out of the Inkwell, which was released in 1916. I said 1908, I meant 1918. Sorry about that. It was released and it was created by Max Fleischer. This landed in China in 1918 and inspired the Wan brothers, Wan Gushan and Wan Lieming, to create their own films. One of these films being Princess Iron Fan. This film is based on an episode of the 16th century novel, Journey to the West. It was directed in Shanghai under difficult conditions in the thick of World War II, and it was released on November 19th, 1941. We see here certain still frames from it where we have the main characters from Journey to the West, the pig, the monkey, and the man, all doing their due diligent tasks. And Princess Iron Fan here. If we jump a few odd years forward or backwards, we get to see the styles really come to fruition. In Western culture, we have Steamboat Willie. The classic is Mickey Mouse. It's Walt Disney's first creation, or at least first feature creation. And we see some notable styles coming through with the thick black lines and the black and white characters being only black and white, not having shading or different gray tone scales, which was definitely to make it easier for the hand animators at the time. But we also get to see this musical aspect, which is very popular in America at this time period. It's the vaudeville style, the sing and dance shows that kept people entertained for years and years. And we see that translated into the cartoon world. Here we see Mickey Mouse playing this animal's teeth as a xylophone, but it is most popular in Looney Tunes. Looney Tunes being spelled Tunes was not just a funny gag, it was because they tried to sell the music in record form that played behind these cartoons. The cartoons were never like the main thing for it. The cartoons were for the children, but they also wanted to sell the music. Where in Eastern culture, I messed this up. This should not say Astro Boy. The film Momotaro's Sacred Sailors was released in 1995, where we see these more complex characters. Granted, it is almost 20 years later, but we see these like beautiful sceneries and these characters that have more than just black and white to them. This film follows a dog, a pheasant, a bear cub, and a monkey. And they say goodbye to their families as they go off to war. But while they're occupied, the monkey's younger brother falls into the river, and the dog and the monkey need to work together to save the child before he is swept downstream. A time skip happens, and they are in war because this is a propaganda film. And they're on this Pacific island where they're chopping through forests and jungles and setting up an air base. And these animal characters are supposed to be portrayed as like primitive people to show how advanced the Japanese people really are, at least in this time. But in more recent years, we get to see this style really take shape. On the Western side, we see characters drawn with strange proportions, being tall and skinny like Waldo, or having weird shaped heads like Arnold or Dexter. But we also see these animal characters like Tom and Jerry, who are very humanoid, or Binky and the Brain, or like the Looney Tunes with like Bugs and Daffy, etc. In the Eastern style, we get to see the classic anime style come to fruition, starting with Astro Boy. It's where we first see the classic big eyes. The big eyes are seen all over anime. And another thing being the spiky hair, the spiky, like multicolored hair that isn't like real hair, but it gives the character some way to be unique. For Western animation, we have the classics, Tom and Jerry, Looney Tunes, Scooby-Doo, Mickey Mouse, and then for more mature audiences like The Simpsons or Family Guy. Where in Eastern animations, we have Cowboy Bebop, Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z, my favorite, One Piece, or Attack on Titan, which I would consider for a more mature audience due to the amount of gore and hard language and political ideas that are stated in this show. How similar these styles or how far apart these styles may be, there's also differences in views of animation through the cultures. In Western culture, we have the mainstream only seeing or only beginning to branch off into more mature audiences. Whereas before this, cartoons were only really meant for children. Like on Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and Disney Channel, they were very predominant in early cartoons to just be watched and enjoyed by kids. While they were enjoyed by adults, the main audience was never adults. That's what they have live action for. Adults don't need silly cartoons. Where in Eastern media, they take a more serious as visual storytelling. I mean, look at here. Their ambassadors for the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games were literally anime characters or different cartoon characters. In the Eastern media, they take it seriously. They have shows for kids, teens, adults, and more. Whereas in Western media, they just stretch reality for more comedic purposes. Eastern media stretches reality to do things a normal person wouldn't be able to. We often see the classic inner monologue of a character followed by them screaming at the top of their lungs, where no human would actually do this. It works. The emotional stress that the character is under and the cartoon style really pushes to seem as real, and the show the emotions a real actor would not be able to convey over exaggeration, just because of how unnatural it is to scream at the top of your lungs because you're so frustrated. However, there are exceptions to these styles. In Western, we have shows like The Boondocks or Avatar: The Last Airbender, or the original Teen Titans series, Powerpuff Girls, Samurai Jack. We see this classic big eye character like the anime style, but we also see, like, here we have the very simple noses. They don't have bridges for their noses, and their mouths are just lines, and their teeth are often very chunky. They might have separations between them in some shows, but it is often just a white line because the teeth aren't really important to the storytelling. For in Eastern culture, we also have exceptions to the anime style. Here we have a more classic approach to animation with more classic Japanese art styles. And in this ping pong one, we see the character has lips and a nose and has proportionate eyes and eyebrows and more realistic hair. It just might be an art style, but it works. It doesn't have to fit the mold of both cultures and styles. And with the molds that people are trying to fill, there's also the sub versus dub argument. Sub being subtitles under a show, meaning you listen to it in its native tongue, but have the translation underneath at the bottom of the screen. Or dub, meaning somebody is talking over in your native language. For example, in an anime like Full Metal Alchemist or Death Note, they have very good dubs where the English voice actors do a very good job of conveying the emotions. But there are also shows that don't fit this. And people have argued for decades now about what's better, sub or dub. I personally think sub is better, but there are shows like Full Metal Alchemist and Death Note that have good dubs to them. And Eastern cultures see the same thing. Shows like King of the Hill or The Boondocks, they will watch with subtitles because certain characters, you cannot portray what they're trying to say or give off their character stereotype with the accents you are given. For example, in an anime that could not sub very well, a character was, his name was Gentleman. I think he was in My Hero Academia. He was supposed to be an Englishman, and you cannot do an English accent over a Japanese accent. It just does not blend well. Same way that Easterners watch King of the Hill subtitled because you can't get that Southern drawl and just like the emphasis certain characters have with Japanese as the language spoken in it. For example, the character Boomhauer, where he kind of stuttered over damn letter like this. You don't really know what he's saying, but yeah, man, you get what he's saying, man. You get it. He stumbles over his words. You don't hear exactly the sentence he's saying, but you get the idea that goes for slang in the Boondocks. It's a tale as old as time and is seen across the world, and people argue it for decades. In conclusion, animation has honestly really come full circle. It's crazy that it all started with a dude painting glass and is now this multi-billion-dollar medium for art and for storytelling. And how no matter the culture, you will find exceptions and you will find arguments that both sides have, and you'll find people enjoying this medium of storytelling that you can't do with live action. And it's genuinely a beautiful thing. And I'll admit, I love it. And I really hope you enjoyed my presentation. I worked really hard on this, and I wanted to get as many points across as I could, because it is something I'm passionate about, because I would like to be a voice actor. I want to be the voice behind the character, if that be in a bad dub or a cool sub. It's what I'm passionate about. Here's also my citations. I used a lot of Wikipedia, so that's why it says most info from here, because I didn't want to get every Wikipedia link for things that had like a sentence of text. For example, Princess Ironfan did not have very much information on it, other than the fact that it was based off of, was it Journey to the West? But I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching. Have a nice break, everybody.